So we've covered, kind of the testing phase and planned ramp ups and starting to get back to care and the different changes that have taken place. So maybe the last thing we can touch on is vaccination. A new ramp up, a different process.
Mhm.
I was wondering, Nate, if you can share, a little bit of the story there and the process and what you've learned and what you, I'm sure, are continuing to learn.
Yeah, so we've had a great team work on the vaccination process. I was very involved, personally involved in those first two examples. Not as involved in the vaccination personally, but our team has been. Holly Boren from our team has been doing a tremendous job in that space, along with our pharmacists and our nurse and again our construction people, so on and so forth. They followed a lot of what we created early on, and you were describing that, Mark, in terms of let's develop what we think could work. Let's practice it. Let's mock it up. And let's make sure we have clear, robust process in order to be able to handle this. And, I've been fortunate. I've been able to go through and get my vaccination. So, as I'm sure we do in any process we tend to enter, we kind of watch it with a certain eye, right? Hey, let's take a little closer look at this. And my observation in the vaccination process is one, um, it is an efficient process in that you come in, you check in, you say who you are, and then you go in, and in our case we have small little tents set up for privacy. It's inside a ballroom in a hotel that is attached to our campus. And after you have your vaccination, any questions? Nope. And I thought this was the best part. So when we go around, we want to make sure that patients don't have an allergic reaction. And so now you have a lot of people to keep track of. How do you make sure that they actually stay for that 15 minutes and make sure they're okay? And so they just go with timers, right? Timers, they press start, counts down 15 minutes, they go have a seat in any of these seats, timer goes off, you bring it back up, they clean it,
Like one of
it's
these
ready for
little
the
just
next
kind of
person.
digital timers. It's like the size of a business card
Yeah,
kind of timer.
yep, exactly. Exactly. And I thought that was a fantastic way because you have so many people coming through. How do you know how does any individual keep track of 15 minutes? And I thought that was just an ingenious approach to put it in the hands of others, literally with a timer. When this goes off, you're free to leave. And that has worked really well. So we've been in the middle of vaccination within the state of Ohio. And, that's, again, I would say there's some similarities to what we were describing in the drive-through testing, right? You have the whole process of what the patient sees in terms of the actual vaccination administration, but then you have the whole supply chain, the supplies beforehand, right? Keeping it really cold, making sure that you take it out so you don't waste it. So again, figuring out all of those details of where are we going to put these special freezers? How are we going to get it from point A to the point of actual administration? How are we going to make sure that it has the appropriate time to thaw? And obviously, most importantly, how are we going to make sure that we don't waste these precious resources, right? Again, very, very common items to what we're used to when we think about process, right? We don't want waste. We don't want scrap that's thrown away. If we're making aluminum cans, we don't want to waste the aluminum. In this case, it's even more precious, right, in terms of what that vaccination represents for people. And so we created processes to make sure that we didn't have waste, and that was having a standby list. We were very early on. We created the standby list where we could call people and says, "Hey, we had 5 no shows today. Would you like to come down? You're next on the standby list."
And going back to just two little details I'm curious about. When you talk about the privacy, I've seen a lot of videos and pictures of different setups. Is the privacy a matter of, I guess if you're in a warm weather climate, people might have short sleeve shirts. In Cleveland, if it's cold and people have sweaters, and I guess getting access to arm may require a state of undress that people would want privacy for.
Yep. Yeah, that was certainly a big driver in it. Recognizing that when we started to administer, it was still pretty cold outside, so people were coming in with their coats and their sweaters and those types of things. So that certainly enables it. And I think it's part of our patient experience element as well. You were describing that earlier, right? How do you keep patients first? And so I think it creates a tighter connection between the nurse or whomever is administering the vaccine and the patient themselves. It creates a space for dialogue, for questions, a little bit more calm in that particular moment. There's obviously, as we know, there's a degree of nervousness for a lot of people. A lot of people are excited about it, and a lot of people are nervous about it. So it gave them a space to be able to ask questions that was kind of a little bit insulated from the rest of the public.
Just thinking of clothing, and you might not have saw, but Dolly Parton put out a video of her vaccination at Vanderbilt.
I heard about it, but I have not seen it yet.
It's
It's on my
cute.
list of things.
She's it's very funny, but she's sending an important message of encouraging people to get vaccinated, and she wore a top, and I forget what my wife called it. I was like, oh, that's a such and such top. Something, but the short, she had cutouts, so it was a blouse, a long sleeve blouse, but just the style of the blouse had cutouts in the shoulder and enough down into her arm that gave a perfect window. I know, I mean, that was an intentional choice, I'm sure, on her part. A perfect window for the vaccinator to come in with the needle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a kind of taking the setup steps, right, and going from internal to external, single minute exchange of dye principles. Dolly Parton was all over it. It sounds like.
Yeah, and I talked to somebody else yesterday when you talk about that external setup. They had set up basically for each lane of people being vaccinated, 2 teams, and basically it's just kind of flipping in, flipping out, doing the setup, and then coming in to work with the patient, and then team 2 is prepping and just having this constant cycling through to minimize the time. And in that video with Dolly, she actually gets a little impatient. She's being cute about it, but she's getting a little impatient and fussy with the doctor because he's fiddling with, I think, opening the syringe package and the stuff that you and I would look at and say like, oh, that should have been externalized. Don't make Dolly, don't make any patient wait. You could do that in advance. So it's really interesting to see how people are innovating and doing things to help improve flow.
So we did that within the drive-through. We chose not to do it within the vaccination, and I think because there's a design difference. So within the drive-through, space was very constrained, and people changing PPE was even longer. Okay, between patients. And so we would have this team that would come in, they'd swab, they would come out, and they'd change their PPE, wash their hands, don their new PPE, and come back. So we essentially were able to do that to keep that flow of cars going because we were constrained in a physical space. In where we are doing our vaccinations currently, we're not as constrained in the physical space. So we've just kind of spread out the stations rather than them having swapping at the spot. And so I think part of what you're getting there is you need to understand what problem you're trying to solve, right? And perhaps if you're in one of these large mega sites, as an example, maybe that is the way you want to do it. And maybe if you're in a smaller site, you don't need to do that. So understanding what problem you're trying to solve is really important before we go ahead and put in a particular practice.
Yeah, and that's a great reminder of taking a look at your own work and your own circumstances instead of just copying a best practice. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of long-standing good practices at Cleveland Clinic. So it was a chance to recap. And again, I would encourage people, if you want some of the background, this was just a couple years ago, you can go back to episode 282 and listen to Nate and Dr. Lisa Yarian talk a little bit more about the background of continuous improvement at Cleveland Clinic. But I think one thing that's noteworthy and worth looking at, to learn from, not to copy, is the Cleveland Clinic improvement model. I was wondering if you could just give maybe the elevator pitch about that. I'll link to it in the show notes where people can find this online. What is that model and why has that been useful to be able to put in front of people?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question, Mark. So this model really serves as our aspiration. It is what we want to become across Cleveland Clinic in terms of the way that we improve. It's a unifying model. Quality improvements, patient experience improvements, productivity improvements, and so on and so forth. And really what we do within the model is we outline the behaviors that we're looking for, the behaviors of senior leaders, managers, and those that are doing the work each and every day. Because we all have different responsibilities, and it's how those connect that really drive our ability to improve. Additionally, we've outlined in our organization what we feel is important are 4 key systems: organizational alignment, visual management, problem solving, and standardization. We feel those are important for us. For a different organization, it might be a different set of systems. It might be a different set of behaviors. Uh, we use this as our aspiration and our roadmap and say this is what we want to create. And then we create the systems to support the behaviors. So you mentioned tiered huddles as an earlier example. That is a system that we created to help our organization identify and solve problems each and every day. We do it throughout our organization every day, where we are looking to understand what problems are getting in the way of providing care and solving and resolving those problems, as well as understanding our daily operations. So we create these systems that support the behaviors. Just before I came on with you, we were actually looking at the improvement model because every year we revise it,
Right.
we
Yeah.
improve it. We realize that our organization continues to evolve and change. And so I was with a cross-functional team, people from other parts of the organization outside of our continuous improvement team, getting their input on potential changes to the improvement model. And so we, as you like to say, we improve the way we improve. And that is something that we take really seriously. And I was just starting to look through the past years and say, maybe there's a story here. If I go all the way back to the first one in 2014-15 and look at each year, what's the story of how it's changed and evolved over time? Part of that story is it has evolved as the Cleveland Clinic has evolved. Our focus on patients, empathy, our focus on high reliability, our focus on speaking up, all of those things are becoming stronger and stronger parts of our improvement.
Yeah. There are certain principles that are very consistent. Like patients first, I imagine, is forever a foundation
Yes.
at Cleveland Clinic, but then some of the details and the specifics within the frameworks of values and principles then evolve and change.
Very true.
So I hope everyone will go check that out. I'll make sure I'm linking to the latest revision. And then maybe just one last question, and maybe we leave this as a teaser for a future episode. Perhaps like when things calm down a little bit. You've had the opportunity to use process behavior charts, a topic near and dear to my heart. I won't go on and on about it, but it's a method from that I've shared in my book, Measures of Success. I was wondering again, maybe just on an elevator pitch scale, if you could share just a little bit, and we can dive into that deeper some other time.
Yeah, I'd love to have that conversation because I think it's fundamental to these problems that we try to solve as continuous improvement professionals, as we try to solve as an organization. And that is back to this question of first, what matters most? Which problems am I trying to improve? And secondarily, is this getting better, worse, or staying the same? Because that helps reinforce what problems I need to solve. So we've started to use them with the majority of our measures so that we can look at our performance over time and we can say things like, hey, this is essentially the same. It's not getting better, it's not getting worse. And maybe for this particular measure, that's okay. For this measure, staying the same might not be okay, right? And we need to do something different and we need to engage in problem solving. So we use those. We've built a series of dashboards with our colleagues in business intelligence. They've done just an absolutely fantastic job of making it very easy for the user to take advantage of this knowledge. And what I mean by that is you don't need to be a Six Sigma black belt to take advantage of what these tools can do for you. You don't need to have a degree in statistics or engineering to take advantage of these tools. We present it in a way to the user where the limits are automatically calculated and whether or not it is stable or unstable is also automatically calculated. And in turn, what that allows people to do is say, this is unstable. I need to go understand why. And that's how we're using it across our organization. We've made tremendous progress over the last couple of years. We had you visit us a few years ago and share this kind of the thinking in your book with the team. And it has been absolutely fantastic and allowed us to talk about the things that are most important.
Well, that's great. And I like the way you're integrating that and incorporating that. So I'll look forward to hearing more. For those who are listening and not watching on YouTube, when Nate was saying staying the same, you couldn't see his finger kind of suggesting the fluctuation up and down, let's say, around an average. So this quote unquote the same, it's not really the same, but it kind of is. And that's what.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, I got to work on my radio skills.
That's okay. And for those of you who are just listening, you don't see that Nate is enjoying a bright sunny day in Cleveland, Ohio. So Nate, thank you for not being outside in the sun and enjoying that. Thank you for being here on the podcast with us. And thank you for sharing, the important work that's being done and continues to be done at Cleveland Clinic. I really appreciate you being able to share that with us today.
Thanks, Mark. You know what? I'm here on behalf of just an amazing team. I've been at the clinic now for 14 years, and the reason is the people are absolutely incredible. People on our continuous improvement team are partners in the organization in nursing and quality, our providers. We just have an absolute world-class team, and we're blessed to be a part of it. So thanks for letting us share our story.
Of course. Thanks again.